There comes a time in history when the world opens its eyes and realizes it has slept through a revolution. But by the time it wakes up, the game has already changed, the players are already different, and the crown has already shifted. Ladies and gentlemen, the world didn't see it coming, but India was never waiting to be seen. While the West was busy underestimating, India was busy becoming. Becoming not just a nation but a force, not just a story but a symbol of what patience, purpose, and power really look like. You see, the world has always had a habit, a dangerous one, of only looking where the noise is. Headlines, summits, sanctions, scandals, that's where attention goes. But let me tell you something today, something the world is just beginning to realize far too late. While the noise was loud elsewhere, India was rising in silence, not through declarations or dominance, but through quiet, disciplined evolution. While others were measuring power in missiles and markets, India was investing in something far more powerful: minds. Yes, the world slept on 1 billion dreams blooming quietly behind classroom doors, university labs, kitchen tables, and co-working spaces. They didn't see the engineers staying up through the night writing lines of code that would soon power a global app. They didn't see the village girl learning math on a cracked tablet screen, destined to change her community's future. They didn't see the farmer's son becoming a scientist. But India did, and it kept going without applause, without headlines. This was not an overnight miracle. This was decades in the making. While the rest of the world debated policy and popularity, India doubled down on education, technology, and human capital, not always with the cleanest roads or the fanciest cities, but with resilience, with the strength of a people who believed in the long game. The kind of strength that doesn't shout. It shows up again and again in global classrooms, in space missions, in startup ecosystems, in diplomacy tables, and now, finally, in the center of the world's focus. But by the time the spotlight turned, India was already seated at the table, not waiting to be invited, but fully prepared to lead. People often ask, when did this happen? The better question is, why didn't we see it? Because the truth is, you don't notice a seed breaking through the soil until the bloom is undeniable. And India has bloomed. What looked like a quiet rise was actually an unstoppable wave of discipline, culture, and collective intention. And the thing about silent revolutions, they leave no room for denial once they arrive. The world watched India's tech exports, its AI power, its innovation surge, its vaccine production, its youth workforce, and suddenly the silence became too loud to ignore. But by then, it wasn't about catching up, it was about keeping up. That's what happens when a nation moves with humility and hunger. It doesn't need to scream its presence. Its impact speaks for itself. India never needed to be the loudest in the room, just the most prepared. And now the room listens. People often underestimate the power of roots because they're hidden. You don't see them, so you forget they're holding everything up. But roots are what give the tallest trees their strength. And India's roots run deep, not just in the earth, but in the spirit, in the soul, in the stories passed down from thousands of years ago. What the world missed is that India's rise wasn't just strategic, it was spiritual. While others built skyscrapers, India built something far more enduring: alignment, a connection between ancient truths and future-facing vision. This wasn't just about having a plan, this was about having purpose. And when a nation is guided by both, by strategy and by something bigger than strategy, it becomes unstoppable. India didn't abandon its traditions to become modern. It wove them into the future. It didn't trade its prayers for progress. It used its prayers as fuel for progress. And that is a wisdom the world is just beginning to understand. The Vedas, the Upanishads, the Bhagavad Gita, they weren't written to sit on dusty shelves. They were blueprints for balance. And balance is power. In a time when so many nations were unraveling under the weight of anxiety, polarization, and burnout, India remembered how to breathe. They remembered how to breathe, how to sit still in chaos, how to find clarity in silence. That wasn't just philosophy, it was preparation. Meditation became innovation. Mindfulness became momentum. This was not about escaping the world. This was about mastering how to move through it. You see, when you know who you are, you don't chase identity, you radiate it. And India's identity has never been borrowed. It's not a reaction to the West or an imitation of the East. India is a universe of its own, a civilization that has taught the world everything from zero to inner peace, from Ayurveda to quantum logic, and it's doing it again, this time on a global stage. The truth is, the world often looks for power in aggression, But India flipped the script. It found strength in stillness, in strategy rooted in consciousness. And now that strength is shaping policies, technologies, climate talks, trade deals, and peace tables. Because when a nation leads with values, not just value, people follow. And here's what many still don't grasp. This blend of spirituality and strategy isn't weakness, it's precision. It's why Indian scientists are sending missions to the moon while chanting mantras. It's why CEOs born in villages are running companies that shape the planet. It's why people once colonized now walk the world stage with heads held high, not in arrogance, but in awareness. So this rise wasn't loud, it was luminous, a steady light. And now that light is being seen, not as a flare of rebellion, but as a beacon of renewal. Because when spirit and strategy move together, the world doesn't just change, it awakens. There is something unstoppable about youth when they know who they are. And right now in India, that power is waking up by the millions. The kind of power that doesn't wait for permission. The kind of power that doesn't need to be told it's capable, because it feels it in its bones. You walk the streets of Bengaluru, of Hyderabad, of Pune, of Lucknow, and you'll feel it. That electric hum of ambition, of minds ticking faster than the world can keep track. You step into a train in Delhi. You pass a chai stand in Chennai, and what you find is not just conversation, it's vision. Because India's youth aren't just dreaming anymore, they're building, coding, designing, healing, leading. This isn't the kind of youth energy that fades in rebellion. This is focused fire. Not just a generation hungry for change, but ready to be the change. And they're not chasing Western dreams, they're defining their own. Startups are being born in dorm rooms. Solutions to billion-person problems are being mapped out on whiteboards in cafes. And every time someone says, "That's impossible," there's a young Indian ready to prove that it's not. But what makes this moment different isn't just the numbers, it's the mindset. This generation grew up watching a country rise from scarcity to scale, from landlines to satellites, from waiting in lines to leading in lines of code. So now their belief isn't borrowed, it's built. They know struggle, but they also know success. And that makes them bold in a way the world isn't ready for. They're not afraid of failure because they've seen their parents face far worse and survive. They're not intimidated by competition because they've grown up in the world's largest democracy, where every inch of progress had to be earned. And they're not lost in identity because they carry the soul of an ancient civilization in one hand and the tools of the future in the other. And here's the truth the world missed while it was looking elsewhere. When you raise a generation that's both rooted and ready, you create the kind of leadership that can't be bought, can't be manipulated, and won't be stopped. India didn't manufacture its youth, it empowered them. It taught them how to adapt, how to endure, how to rise with grace and fight with intellect. And now, they're not just participating in the global conversation, they're rewriting the narrative. From Google to Microsoft, from climate tech to quantum computing, from storytelling to social reform, India's young minds are showing the world not just how to compete, but how to create. And they're doing it with humility, with purpose, with a sense of responsibility that echoes louder than any slogan. The future isn't coming, it's already here. And it's speaking Hindi, Tamil, Marathi, Bengali, Kannada, Urdu, and code. Soft power doesn't arrive with armies or announcements. It arrives with influence, quiet, undeniable, deeply cultural influence. And India, oh yes, India has mastered that kind of power. It didn't need to raise its voice. It just kept raising its frequency. And now the whole world is humming along to a rhythm it didn't even realize came from the East. Look around. Yoga mats rolled out in every major city on this planet. Meditation apps rooted in Indian philosophy downloaded by millions who were never taught how to sit still. Ayurveda finding its way into skincare routines and wellness retreats from Malibu to Munich. Bollywood films streaming in Paris, Nairobi, and Toronto, subtitled but never diluted. Indian cuisine transforming dinner tables across the world. These aren't trends. These are transmissions, quiet seeds of culture taking root across continents. Not because they were imposed, but because they were irresistible. That's soft power, the kind that makes people want to come closer, to learn more, to participate, to connect. And India didn't just export practices, it exported presence, a way of thinking, a way of being, a philosophy that doesn't ask you to choose between strength and peace, ambition and contentment, science and spirit. It says, you can be whole, you can be both. And while the world looked to hard power for protection, India showed them something even more powerful: belonging. Because people don't follow force for long, but they will follow meaning. They will follow compassion. They will follow wisdom. And that's what India gave again and again, without needing to dominate a single nation to do it. Throughout history, moments have arrived that silently changed the direction of the world, moments that unfolded while most were looking elsewhere, moments that redefined power not by the volume of noise, but by the depth of impact. India's rise is one of those moments. It was not loud. It was not declared with trumpets or paraded on global stages. It was a quiet, patient, and relentless journey that blossomed while the world was distracted. It was a story written in the silence of late night studies, in the hushed resilience of rural homes, in the soft but steady determination of a nation that chose not to demand attention but to earn respect. India was not waiting for permission to rise. It was not waiting for validation. It was not seeking to imitate or outshine others. It was simply walking its path, grounded in its roots, empowered by its people, and driven by its purpose. While the world looked westward, mesmerized by noise, by superficial headlines, by fleeting scandals, India was nurturing a revolution from within, a revolution that did not seek to conquer others, but to master itself. This transformation was not spontaneous. It was the result of decades of investment, not in fleeting strength, but in lasting substance. India understood the true measure of power. It knew that missiles can be decommissioned, markets can collapse, and empires can fade, but human minds empowered with education, curiosity, and creativity, build legacies that endure. It quietly invested in its youth, in its schools, in its laboratories, and in the infinite potential sleeping within its people. The seeds of this revolution were planted in the classrooms, nurtured in the struggles of ordinary citizens, and watered by the tireless efforts of unsung heroes. While others were obsessed with displays of dominance, India was building the future on the solid foundation of patience, discipline, and vision. The world often mistakes silence for absence. It believes that power must roar, that influence must scream. But India has proven that there is unmatched power in quiet growth, in steady resilience, in moving forward without demanding the spotlight. The most profound changes in history have rarely arrived with noise. They have arrived like the sunrise, slow, undeniable, illuminating everything in their path. That is the story of India's rise. The brilliance of this journey lies in India's ability to weave its ancient soul into its modern ambitions. It did not abandon its heritage to chase progress. It did not trade its prayers for prosperity. Instead, it carried its traditions into the future, using them as a compass, as fuel, as an anchor. India showed the world that spirituality is not a relic of the past, it is a resource for the future. While others raced forward and lost themselves in the chaos, India remembered how to be still, how to breathe, how to find clarity amid confusion. The world watched with surprise as India began leading in technology, in space exploration, in medicine, in innovation. They asked, when did this happen? But the truth is, it was happening all along. It was happening in the homes where children studied by candlelight, in the cities where coders stayed awake through the night, in the villages where dreamers refused to settle for less. The world simply wasn't looking. And when it finally did look, it realized that India was not emerging. It had already arrived, not as a challenger, not as a follower, but as a leader shaped by humility and driven by purpose. India did not wait to be invited to the table. It built its own seat. It did not try to overpower others. It simply became so prepared, so capable, so deeply rooted that the world could no longer ignore its presence. The true power of India's rise lies not in the sheer numbers, but in the mindset of its people. The youth of India are not burdened by the fear of failure. They have grown up witnessing a nation move from scarcity to scale, from waiting in lines to leading in lines of code, from landlines to satellites. Their belief in themselves is not borrowed, it is built. They carry the wisdom of an ancient civilization in one hand and the tools of the future in the other. This unique blend makes them fearless, adaptable, and relentlessly optimistic. India's story is not just about economic growth or technological breakthroughs. It is about redefining leadership in a world that is tired of noise, tired of division, and exhausted by empty displays of power. India's leadership is not born from conquest but from consciousness. It is not about ruling with iron fists, but about influencing with open hearts. India is teaching the world that real leadership listens before it speaks, that real power comes from creating, not from controlling, That real influence does not need to dominate, it simply needs to inspire. India's soft power has rippled across the globe, not through military bases or aggressive expansion, but through culture, through ideas, through the irresistible pull of connection. Yoga mats now stretch across continents. Meditation practices born in India are guiding millions in the search for peace. Indian cuisine, cinema, music, and philosophy are no longer confined to borders. They have become part of the world's shared story. And all of this was not exported through force. It spread because it resonated, because it offered something people everywhere were silently searching for: meaning. India's digital revolution was not designed to impress the world. It was built to include the last villager. Its technology did not emerge to prove superiority. It emerged to solve, to connect, to empower. India built the world's largest biometric ID system, not for surveillance, but for service. It turned its diversity, a nation of hundreds of languages, cultures, and faiths, into its greatest strength. It did not erase differences. It embraced them, creating unity not through uniformity, but through mutual respect and shared purpose. While many nations clung desperately to outdated systems, India dared to innovate inside its own soul. It reimagined democracy at scale. It redefined what it means to lead in a fractured world. It balanced contradictions, tradition and technology, faith and science, stillness and speed, not by choosing one over the other, but by holding them both. It proved that ancient wisdom and modern strategy are not enemies, they are allies. In a world where so many are burned out, disconnected, divided, India offers community balance and depth. It offers a reminder that leadership does not have to be loud to be effective, that you don't need to dominate to create change, that you don't have to erase your past to build your future. India's leadership moves quietly, but its footsteps are felt everywhere. The old maps of power, where the world revolved around a few capitals, a few currencies, and a few names, those maps are fading. The compass has shifted. It now points east. India's rise is not about replacing anyone. It is about redefining what it means to lead. The world waited for a new superpower to rise with flags, with force, with flexing. India brought something else: values, vision, vitality. It showed the world that you don't need to shout to be seen. You just need to shine. And now, India is not just present, it is shaping the story. From boardrooms to classrooms, from climate solutions to space missions, India's fingerprints are everywhere. Its diaspora is not spreading to assimilate, they are spreading to uplift, to carry pieces of home into every corner of the globe, to remind the world that strength can be soft, that power can be gentle, that influence can be deeply human. India has not just risen, it has awakened something far bigger than itself. It has reminded us all that true leadership is not about commanding attention, it is about earning trust. That the most powerful transformations do not come from force, they come from invitation. That when you build not to conquer but to connect, the world comes closer. The future does not belong to those who shout the loudest. It belongs to those who listen, who build with intention, who walk with clarity, who lead with soul. And that is India's gift to the world. It is not a gift wrapped in aggression. It is a gift of presence, of story, of spirit. And that gift is reshaping the global rhythm. The old world may have woken up late, but when it did, it found not just a rising superpower. It found a new kind of power altogether. A power that does not fade with time, that does not need to compete, that does not need to control. A power that co-creates, that uplifts, that invites everyone to rise together. To those who doubted, look again. To those who overlooked, pay attention. To those who still ask, can India lead? The answer is clear: India already is. And the most remarkable part is, it did not need to force the world to follow. The world chose to. Because this isn't just the story of India's rise, it is the story of the world's awakening. And that is just the beginning.